The words hung in the air of our living room, thick and suffocating, like the cheap, cloying perfume that clung to him. It wasn't his usual scent. It was hers, Lauren's. I want a divorce, Nora. My name is Nora, by the way, and for 15 years I'd been his wife. 15 years just flushed away with 4 words and the lingering aroma of someone else's desire. He didn't even have the decency to look me in the eye. Daryl, my Daryl, stood there, shifting his weight, his gaze fixed on some indeterminate spot over my left shoulder. It's just not working anymore, he mumbled, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. The hair I used to love to mess up. Not working? I finally found my voice, a thin, reedy sound I barely recognized. Daryl, we've been married for 15 years. What isn't working? He sighed, a gust of impatience. You, Nora. You're not working. You've let yourself go. My breath hitched. Let myself go? I looked down at myself. Comfortable jeans, a soft sweater. I wasn't in cocktail attire on a Tuesday evening. No, I was home, our home, where I thought we were building a life, where I'd spent years supporting his dreams, putting mine on hold. I'm not the woman you married, he continued, his voice gaining a cruel confidence now that the initial awkwardness was past. I need more. Someone with vitality. Vitality. Was that what they called 22-year-olds with more ambition in their cleavage than in their careers? The image of Lauren, his new assistant, flashed in my mind, all batting eyelashes and a predatory smile I'd dismissed as youthful insecurity. How wrong I'd been. The argument, if you could call his monologue an argument, was short and brutal. He'd already made up his mind. He'd probably made it up months ago, during one of his many late nights at work that reeked of that same cheap perfume. He was packed by morning, a few expensive suitcases by the door. He didn't take much, just his designer clothes, his high tech gadgets, his new golf clubs. He left behind 15 years of shared memories as if they were last week's trash, not even a backward glance at the wedding photo on the mantel. The days that followed were a blur of forced smiles for concerned friends and hollow reassurances to my own bewildered reflection in the mirror. Then, a week later, the humiliation was compounded. I saw it, or rather, her, Lauren, smirking from the passenger seat of a brand new cherry red sports car, the kind Daryl had always said we couldn't afford, not while he was building his empire. He was driving, laughing, one hand on the wheel, the other casually draped over her bare shoulder as they sped past the cafe where I was trying to choke down a coffee. The car, I later discovered through a quick, painful search online, was bought with money from our joint savings account. The one I'd painstakingly built up, penny by penny, from my freelance graphic design work while supporting his endless, often fruitless ventures. The shock, the raw, bleeding wound of his betrayal began to scab over, and underneath, something else started to grow. Something cold, hard, and sharp as a shard of ice. Resolve. He thought I was weak. He thought I'd crumble into a sobbing mess and accept whatever crumbs he threw my way. He'd always underestimated me, even from the beginning. He saw the quiet supporter, not the silent observer. I remembered our wedding day, 15 years ago. My family, bless their practical hearts, had insisted on a prenuptial agreement. I came from a modest background, but I had a small inheritance from my grandmother, and my father, ever the pragmatist, wanted to protect my future. Just in case. He'd seen a flicker of something in Daryl back then, a self serving streak I'd been too blinded by love to acknowledge. Daryl had laughed it off when my father broached the subject. He was already showing signs of the arrogance that would later define him, though back then it was masked as confident charm. A prenup? For what, Nora? Your collection of vintage teacups and that little nest egg? He'd been charming then, his dismissal coated in a layer of affectionate teasing as he pulled me close. It's just a formality, babe. We're forever. But if it makes your folks happy, I'll sign whatever piece of paper they want. He'd barely glanced at it before scrawling his signature, eager to get to the part where everyone celebrated him. Just a formality, he'd repeated, already thinking about the open bar at the reception and impressing my relatives with his grand plans. He'd forgotten about it. I was certain of it. Men like Daryl, men who believe they hold all the cards, rarely pay attention to the fine print, especially when it's designed to protect someone they deem lesser, someone they plan to eventually discard. But I hadn't forgotten. Oh no. How could I? It was a promise, not just to my family, but to myself. A safety net I prayed I'd never need. A few months had passed since that awful evening in the living room. Daryl had officially moved in with Lauren, flaunting their new life on social media while I was supposedly picking up the shattered pieces of mine. He called occasionally, his voice dripping with false concern, asking if I was managing okay and if I'd come to my senses about his initial ludicrously unfair settlement offer. He wanted me to sign divorce papers quickly, offering a pittance he called generous, enough to get back on my feet, he'd said, as if I'd been lounging on a featherbed for 15 years. Tonight, the house felt emptier than usual. The silence pressed in, heavy and expectant. I walked to the old cedar chest at the foot of my bed. The key, a small, ornate silver thing, was tucked away in my jewelry box, hidden beneath earrings I no longer wore. My fingers trembled slightly as I unlocked it. The scent of cedar and old paper wafted out, a scent of secrets and time. Inside, beneath a layer of carefully preserved baby clothes I'd once hoped we'd need, lay a thick, legal sized envelope. My hands were steady now. I pulled out the document, its pages crisp despite their age, the prenuptial agreement, executed 15 years, 3 months, and 2 days ago. I smoothed it out on the polished wood of my nightstand. My eyes scanned the familiar clauses, the dense legal jargon that had once seemed so intimidating, so unnecessary. Then I found it. Clause 7, subsection B, the infidelity clause. Clear, concise, and utterly brutal. My father, with his quiet wisdom, had insisted on its inclusion, his lawyer friend drafting it with an almost gleeful precision. A slow, dangerous smile spread across my lips, a smile Darrell had never seen, a smile that held no warmth, only the promise of a meticulously planned reckoning. A formality, you said, Darrell. I whispered to the empty room, the document clutched in my hand like a weapon. Let's see about that. The game wasn't over. It had just begun. And I was about to change all the rules. He thought he was writing the ending to our story. He had no idea I was already working on an entirely new script, one where he wouldn't like his part at all. The next phone call from Darrell came 2 days later. I let it ring 3 times, took a shaky breath, and answered with a carefully constructed tremor in my voice. Hello? Nora? You sound awful. Are you still moping around? His tone was impatient, laced with that familiar condescension. I I just miss you, Darrell. I choked out, squeezing my eyes shut to conjure a tear. It worked. A single, perfect tear rolled down my cheek. This is also hard. Well, it wouldn't be if you'd just signed the papers. My lawyer sent them over again. It's a fair offer, Nora. More than fair, considering. Considering what? Considering he'd found a newer model? I bit back the retort. I I'll look at them again, I whispered. It's just so final. He sighed, a sound I could practically see him making, rolling his eyes. Look, I'm trying to be decent here. Don't make me regret it. Decent. Right. His mother, Marin, called later that week. Her calls were always an ordeal. Nora, dear, she began, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. Darrell tells me you're being difficult. Difficult, Marin? I'm heartbroken, I said, letting my voice crack. He's left me. Well, these things happen, dear. Sometimes a man just needs a change. You have to keep them interested, you know. Perhaps if you'd paid more attention to yourself. I let her drone on, her thinly veiled criticisms washing over me. Each word was a tiny pebble added to the mountain of evidence I was building. While she lectured, I was scrolling through Daryl's latest Instagram post. Him and Lauren, champagne flutes in hand, on a yacht. The caption read, Living our best life, blessed one new beginnings. The yacht, I noted with a grim satisfaction, was chartered using funds from our rapidly dwindling household account. Screenshot, saved, dated. I started tracking everything. Credit card statements arrived online, detailing lavish dinners, designer clothes for Lauren, weekend trips to boutique hotels. Every receipt, every social media post, every smug selfie, cataloged. I was becoming an archivist of my own betrayal. My performance extended beyond phone calls. I needed to see Lauren to gauge her, so I accidentally bumped into her at our old favorite coffee shop, the one Daryl now frequented with her. I feigned surprise, my hand flying to my mouth. "Oh, Lauren, I didn't expect to see you here." She looked me up and down, a small, triumphant smirk playing on her lips. She was all bright, tight clothing and too much makeup. "Nora, right? Daryl's mentioned you." "He has?" I tried to look hopeful, pathetic. "Yeah, he said you were taking this pretty hard." Her eyes, cold and assessing, raked over me again. "He just wants to move on, you know. Be happy. You should try it sometime." Tears welled, genuine ones this time, fueled by a rage so potent it almost choked me. "It's just 15 years is a long time," I stammered, dabbing at my eyes with a napkin. "Well, people change. Get over it." She picked up her latte, perfectly manicured nails tapping against the cup. "He's with me now, and we're really happy." She sauntered off, leaving me to play the part of the weeping, abandoned wife. The barista gave me a sympathetic look and a free muffin. Little did anyone in that cafe know the real performance was the one Lauren had just given, a perfect display of arrogance and dismissiveness that would play beautifully later. Now, here's the thing. You might be thinking, I'm just a woman scorned, suddenly finding a backbone, and yes, the scorn was very, very real. But the backbone? That had been there for a while. I didn't just remember the prenup after Daryl dropped his bombshell. That would have been too convenient, too much like a movie plot. No, the truth is, I dusted off that prenup years ago, the first time I saw a suspicious text on Daryl's phone, the first time his late nights at work started becoming a pattern. I'd taken it to a lawyer, a sharp, no nonsense woman named Maria Santos. This, Maria had said, tapping the infidelity clause with a perfectly manicured nail, much like Lauren's but infinitely more intelligent. "This is your ace in the hole, Nora. If he ever truly crosses the line, and you can prove it, this document will protect you. More than protect you, it will give you leverage." We'd reviewed it thoroughly. I understood every clause, every implication. And then I'd put it back in the cedar chest and waited. I'd hoped, prayed even, that I'd never need it. I'd tried to fix things, to talk to Daryl, to rekindle what we'd lost. But his eyes were already elsewhere. He was already mentally checked out, just waiting for the right moment, the right replacement, to make his move. My devastation that night in the living room? It was real in a way. The death of a dream always is. But beneath the grief was a cold, hard layer of preparedness. His cruelty, his blatant affair, his assumption of my weakness. He was walking right into the trap I'd been forced to set years ago. He was overplaying his hand so spectacularly, it was almost beautiful to watch. My tears were real, but my helplessness was an act. The phone rang again tonight. Daryl. "Nora, good news. Lauren and I are heading to Napa for the weekend. Celebrating a bit." He sounded smug, almost giddy. "Anyway, my lawyer, Owen, is going to send over some preliminary papers. Just some standard stuff to get the ball rolling, speed things along. You'll sign them, right?" "No fuss?" I sniffled, right on cue. "Napa? That sounds lovely, Daryl." A pause, then. "Yes, of course. Anything to make this easier." A silent vow echoed in my heart, a counterpoint to my meek words. "Oh, I'll make it easier, Daryl. Easier for you to lose everything." "Good girl," he said, the condescension practically dripping through the phone. "Talk soon." He hung up. I stared at my phone, a slow, predatory smile spreading across my face. The performance was about to enter its most critical phase, and he had no idea the curtains were about to fall on his entire, carefully constructed charade. My grief needed to be thorough, my despair utterly convincing. But while I was publicly falling apart, privately, I was building an arsenal. The screenshots and bank statements were a good start, but I needed more. Something undeniable. I hired a private investigator, a discreet man named Mr. Henderson, recommended by Maria. He was expensive, but worth every penny. Within a week, he delivered his first report. Photos, Daryl and Lauren, hand in hand, kissing openly outside a ridiculously priced restaurant. Daryl's arm around her waist as they browsed a jewelry store, Lauren pointing animatedly at a diamond display. Incriminating messages, retrieved from a shared cloud account Daryl had foolishly forgotten I had access to, messages filled with sickening pet names and explicit plans for their future, a future built on the wreckage of ours. The joint account Daryl was so gleefully plundering, it stung, yes, watching the balance dwindle on his lavish new life. But here was another little secret Daryl didn't know. Years ago, when his business ventures started looking more like expensive hobbies and his commitment to our financial future seemed to wane, I'd had a long chat with a financial advisor, again, quietly, without fanfare. Following her advice, I had subtly restructured our major assets. The house, which had a significant amount of equity, was primarily in my name due to my initial larger down payment from my inheritance, something Daryl had waved off as just paperwork at the time. My own savings, the serious ones, were in accounts he didn't even know existed. The joint account he was draining was substantial, yes, designed to look like our main pot, but it wasn't the entirety of our wealth. Not by a long shot. He was torching his own safety net, thinking it was mine. The performance had to extend to his family, particularly Marin. She invited me to dinner, a command performance I couldn't refuse if I wanted to maintain my facade of the wronged, bewildered wife. Nora, you look tired, Marin said, her eyes scanning me critically as I sat down at her perfectly set dining table. Daryl, thankfully, was too busy to attend. It's been a difficult time, Marin, I said, picking at the dry chicken she served. Well, marriage isn't always easy, dear, she pronounced, dabbing her lips with a linen napkin. A woman has to make an effort. Men have needs. If those needs aren't met at home, she let the sentence hang, her implication clear. I was to blame. I hadn't been woman enough, wife enough. I tried, Marin. I really did, I said, my voice soft, laced with a carefully measured dose of sorrow. Trying isn't always doing, Nora. She sighed dramatically. Daryl is a good man, a successful man. He deserves happiness. I absorbed her barbs, her pronouncements, her complete and utter blindness to her son's flaws. Inside, a cold fury simmered, but outwardly, I was the picture of heartbroken acceptance. I even managed to squeeze out a few tears when she spoke of Daryl's newfound joy with Lauren. She's a lovely girl, Marin cooed, so vibrant, and she clearly adores him. The dinner was an exercise in supreme self control. I left her house feeling drained, but also strangely invigorated. Her condescension, her blame, it all fueled the fire. The next day, I met with Maria. Her office was sleek, modern, and exuded competence. I laid out my growing file: Mr. Henderson's report, the financial statements, the screenshots, even a summary of Marin's delightful dinner conversation. Maria sifted through it, her expression unreadable at first, then a slow, appreciative smile spread across her face. Nora, this is comprehensive. She picked up one of the photos, Daryl and Lauren looking disgustingly smitten, emerging from a five-star hotel. He's not even trying to be discreet, is he? Not anymore, I said. He thinks I'm too broken to notice or too stupid to care. His mistake, Maria said, her eyes gleaming. The infidelity is blatant, well documented. The dissipation of marital assets, this spending on Lauren, is equally clear. And with the prenup, she tapped the copy I'd brought. This isn't just a shield, Nora. It's a sword, and you've sharpened it beautifully. She explained the strength of our position again, how Daryl's actions had triggered the most severe clauses. It wasn't just about protecting my premarital assets anymore, it was about significant damages. He thinks he's going to walk away with the lion's share and leave you with scraps, Maria said. He's in for a very rude awakening. A sense of calm settled over me. The plan was working. Every piece was falling into place. Just as I was about to leave Maria's office, my phone buzzed. A new email from Mr. Henderson. Subject: Urgent update. I opened it, Maria looking over my shoulder. New photos. Crystal clear. Got Daryl on one knee in a public park. Lauren, hand over her mouth, feigning shock, then ecstatic joy. A close up of a large, garish diamond ring on her finger. They were engagement ring shopping in the earlier photos. This was the proposal itself. A surge of icy calm washed through me, so profound it was almost serene. He was sealing his own fate, gift wrapping it with a diamond. I looked at Maria. She raised an eyebrow. He's making this too easy, I murmured, a ghost of a smile on my lips. Some men are their own worst enemies, Maria agreed, her smile matching mine. They dig their own graves with such enthusiasm. The web was woven, the evidence was irrefutable. All that was left was to wait for the perfect moment to let him walk into it, and that moment I sensed was coming very soon. Let's go over the formality one more time, shall we? Maria said, spreading the prenup across her wide mahogany desk. The air in her office hummed with a quiet, predatory energy. This was her battlefield, and she was a seasoned general. We spent the next few weeks dissecting every line, every subclause. The document, drafted by my father's shrewd lawyer all those years ago, was a masterpiece of foresight. The infidelity clause, Clause 7, subsection B, was the star, of course. It wasn't just a vague deterrent. It was a meticulously crafted instrument of financial devastation for the unfaithful party if they were the one to initiate the divorce proceedings based on their desire to pursue another relationship. And Daryl, bless his arrogant heart, had done exactly that, even putting his reasons in writing in his initial, ill advised email demanding the divorce. Proven adultery by the party initiating the dissolution, Maria read aloud, her voice crisp, results in the forfeiture of claims to certain marital assets and she paused for dramatic effect, her eyes twinkling. Entitles the aggrieved party to a significant redistribution of said assets, plus substantial compensatory damages. It was even better than I remembered from my initial review years ago. Not only were my premarital assets and inheritance ironclad, but the prenup stipulated that in the event of Daryl's proven infidelity leading to the divorce he sought, I was entitled to the primary marital home, free and clear. It also awarded me a staggering 70% of all other assets accumulated during the marriage. And the kicker, the part that made Maria grin like a Cheshire cat, a hefty claim on his future earnings for 5 years. 5 years? This was framed as damages for derailing my own career aspirations, which I'd demonstrably put on hold to support his genius and manage our household, under the verbal agreement that he would be the primary earner while we started a family that never materialized because, as I now suspected, he was already looking for exits. He signed this, I breathed, still slightly in awe of its sheer ruthlessness. He actually signed this. Men like Daryl rarely read the fine print when they're convinced they're the smartest person in the room, Maria said dryly. He saw a young woman with a modest inheritance and probably thought it was a charming little document to appease her overprotective father. He never imagined he'd be the one caught in its teeth. A new email pinged in Maria's inbox. Ah, speak of the devil, she murmured, clicking it open. It's from Owen Baker, Daryl's lawyer, another settlement offer. She projected it onto the large screen on her wall. It was, as expected, insulting, a slight increase from his previous lowball offer, but still laughably inadequate. He was offering me a fraction of the value of the house, a pittance of our joint savings, the ones he hadn't already spent, and a condescending note that this was his final and most generous offer considering Nora's lack of contribution to the marital finances. I snorted. Lack of contribution? I ran our lives, managed his chaotic business books for the first 5 years, and poured every spare penny I earned into that joint account he's treating like his personal slush fund. He's confident, isn't he? Maria said, a dangerous glint in her eye. He clearly believes you're desperate and uninformed. So, what's our move? I asked. We play his game, for now, Maria advised. We counter, but not too aggressively. We make him think you're starting to see reason, that you're weakening. We'll offer slightly more than his pittance, but still far, far below what you're actually entitled to. Let him feel like he's winning, like he's grinding you down. So we drafted a counter offer. It was an exercise in feigned capitulation. I reluctantly agreed to give up my claim on his precious business, which, according to the prenup, I could have demanded a significant share of, or its equivalent value, and asked for a slightly larger portion of the remaining joint savings and a modest alimony for a couple of years. It was still a fraction of what the prenup guaranteed. Maria sent it off. We didn't have to wait long for a response. Her phone rang less than an hour later. Owen Baker. Maria put him on speaker. Maria, darling. Owen's voice oozed false bonhomie. Good to hear from you. I see your client is starting to come to her senses. Smart girl. I clenched my fists under the table. We're trying to be reasonable, Owen, Maria replied, her voice cool and professional. Reasonable? Owen chuckled, a patronizing sound. Look, Maria, between us, your client is being unrealistic if she thinks she's getting much more. Daryl is being incredibly generous here. He could drag this through the courts, make it messy. He doesn't want to, but his patience is wearing thin. This new offer of hers, it's still not quite there. Tell her to take Daryl's last offer. It's the best she's going to get. He's not going to be played for a fool. Played for a fool. The irony was so thick I could have spread it on toast. We will consider Mr. Warren's previous offer, Maria said smoothly, and we will have our final response ready for the meeting next Tuesday. Will that be acceptable? Tuesday it is, Owen said, sounding smugly satisfied. But tell Nora not to get her hopes up. Daryl's not budging much further. He's ready to move on with his life. He paused, then added with a little laugh, with his lovely fiancée, Lauren. They're already planning the wedding, you know. He hung up. The silence in Maria's office was electric. He has no idea. I whispered, a thrill coursing through me. He has absolutely no idea what's about to hit him. None whatsoever, Maria confirmed, her smile sharp as a scalpel. The formality, Mr. Baker, is about to become a fortress, and your client, Mr. Warren, is about to find himself on the wrong side of the wall with nothing but the clothes on his back. Tuesday couldn't come soon enough. Daryl, true to Owen's word, started to ramp up the pressure. His calls became more frequent, his tone shifting from false concern to outright irritation. Nora, have you signed yet? He'd snap without even a perfunctory hello. This is dragging on. I've got plans, you know. Lauren and I are looking at venues. We can't put our lives on hold forever because you're having a pity party. I'm still thinking, Daryl. I'd reply, my voice deliberately small and uncertain. It's a big decision. Thinking? What's there to think about? It's more than generous. If you don't sign by Tuesday, I'm telling Owen to file contested. We'll go to court, and trust me, you won't like how that plays out. It'll be messy, expensive, and you'll end up with even less. Is that what you want? His threats were hollow, but they were part of the performance. I had to appear rattled. Then came Lauren. Her arrogance, it seemed, knew no bounds. Or perhaps Daryl, in his frustration, had sent his little attack dog to hurry things along. I was at the grocery store, listlessly pushing a cart down the cereal aisle when I heard her voice, sharp and unwelcome. Nora, fancy meeting you here. Still stocking up on comfort food? I turned, feigning surprise and a touch of fear. There she was, dressed in athleisure wear that cost more than my entire grocery bill, a smirk plastered on her face. Lauren? Hello. Look, she said, stepping closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial yet threatening tone. Daryl's getting really tired of this. He's a good man. He deserves to be happy. Why are you making this so difficult? I I just need some time, I stammered, clutching the handle of my cart. Time for what? She scoffed. To hope he changes his mind? Honey, that ship has sailed, sunk, and is now an artificial reef. He's with me. We're getting married. Just sign the papers and move on with your sad little life. My heart was pounding, but not with fear, with a strange, exhilarating anticipation. This was it. This was the moment. He's offering you a good deal, she continued, leaning in even closer, her cheap perfume making me want to gag. More than you deserve, if you ask me. He just wants this over. Clean break. I I don't know what to do, I whispered, letting my eyes fill with tears. My hand, holding my phone, fumbled. The phone slipped, clattering to the linoleum floor. Oh, my phone! I bent to pick it up, my fingers accidentally brushing the screen. The screen that was, of course, actively recording audio. Lauren rolled her eyes. Clumsy much? Just get it together, Nora. Sign the papers. Daryl's already talking to his lawyer about how to protect his assets if you keep being difficult. He's not going to let you take him to the cleaners. He's smart. He's made sure you'll get next to nothing if you fight this. Bingo. I straightened up, clutching my phone, my face a mask of distress. Protect his assets? What do you mean? Lauren smirked, clearly enjoying her perceived power. Let's just say Daryl knows how to play the game. You won't win, so just give up. Sign, and maybe he'll even throw in a little extra for your troubles out of pity. She flicked her hair. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a spin class, and unlike some people, I like to keep myself in shape. She sauntered off, leaving me standing amidst the brightly colored cereal boxes, my recording still silently capturing the ambient store noise. Later that evening, I called my best friend June. She'd been my rock through all of this, offering a quiet, unwavering stream of support without ever prying too deeply. I recounted the encounter with Lauren, pitching my voice with distress, emphasizing Lauren's cruelty and threats. Oh, Nora, that's awful, June said, her sympathy genuine. She sounds like a horrible person. And Daryl putting her up to that? Despicable. I just feel so intimidated, I said, letting a sob escape. You're stronger than you think, June said softly. There was a pause, and then she added, her voice laced with something I couldn't quite decipher. A knowingness, perhaps. You know, Nora, sometimes the quietest people are the ones with the most going on underneath. Don't let them underestimate you. I smiled. June didn't know the details, not really. I hadn't burdened her with the prenup or the full extent of my counter-offensive. But she knew me. She sensed the steel beneath the silk. The recording of Lauren wasn't just a general record of her nastiness. Her explicit mention of Daryl's plans to protect his assets and her certainty that I would get next to nothing if I fought, that was gold. Pure, unadulterated proof of his intent to defraud, to hide assets, to ensure the divorce left me destitute while he sailed off into the sunset with his new bride and our money. Maria would be thrilled. The following Monday, the day before the scheduled meeting, Daryl called again. His voice was tight with controlled fury. Nora, this is it. My final offer is on the table. Owen has it. You sign it at the meeting tomorrow, or I swear to God I will make your life a living hell in court. I will drag your name through the mud. I will fight you for every single penny. Do you understand me? The final offer he was referring to was, of course, the same insulting pittance he'd been peddling all along. I I understand, Daryl, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He hung up without another word. I immediately called Maria. He just delivered his ultimatum, I said, a strange sense of calm washing over me. He's given me until tomorrow's meeting to sign his final offer. Is it still the insulting one? Maria asked, though she already knew the answer. Of course. There was a pause, then Maria said, so he's boxed himself in. He's left no room for negotiation on his end, assuming you're about to capitulate completely. Exactly, I replied. A slow smile spread across my face. I think he's ready for the truth, Maria. Don't you? Oh, I think he's more than ready, Maria said, her voice purring with anticipation. He's practically begging for it. The week leading up to the lawyers' meeting was a strange paradox. Outwardly, I escalated my performance of a woman on the verge of a complete breakdown. Inwardly, a profound, almost unnerving calm had settled over me. I finalized every last detail with Maria. The evidence was collated, indexed, and duplicated. The recording of Lauren's delightful little speech in the grocery store had been transcribed and notarized. Mr. Henderson's final report, complete with photos of Daryl moving Lauren's belongings into what he clearly considered his new bachelor pad, paid for with our money, naturally, was added to the pile. Maria assured me everything was beyond airtight. He won't know what hit him, she'd said, her eyes sparkling with professional zeal during our last prep meeting. This isn't just a case, Nora. This is a public service. My phone calls with Daryl became masterpieces of feigned despair. During one particularly memorable exchange, he outlined his and Lauren's honeymoon plans, a month-long tour of Italy, first class all the way. It's going to be epic, Nora, he gloated. A fresh start. You should try to find one too, you know. Maybe take up a hobby, knitting or something. That sounds wonderful for you, Daryl, I managed, injecting a pathetic wobble into my voice. Real tears pricked my eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness for his new life. They were tears of sheer, unadulterated anticipation for the moment his epic plans would collide with the brick wall of reality I was about to erect. And about the house, he continued, his tone magnanimous, you can keep some of the sentimental junk, I guess. The old photo albums, your grandmother's china, that sort of thing. Lauren's got great taste. She'll want to redecorate completely when we, well, you know. He meant when he inevitably took possession of the house, he thought I'd be forced to sell for a pittance. That's very generous of you, Daryl, I whispered. Yeah, well, I'm a generous guy. The audacity. In the evenings after these draining calls, I moved with quiet efficiency. I wasn't packing sentimental junk. I was carefully wrapping and boxing my truly valuable personal items. My grandmother's actual silver, not just the china, first edition books I'd collected over years, artwork I'd bought with my own earnings before Daryl's ventures had bled me dry. These weren't marital assets. They were mine, and they were going into secure storage far away from his greedy, presumptuous grasp. The junk he could have. The house felt different, lighter somehow, as if it too was anticipating a cleansing. I walked through the rooms not with sadness, but with a sense of impending reclamation. This was my home. I had chosen the paint colors, tended the garden, filled it with love and hope, even when he had offered none in return. The night before the meeting, I found myself standing in front of the hallway mirror, an old framed photograph in my hands. It was Daryl and me, taken on our honeymoon, 15 years younger, faces bright with what I had then believed was a shared future. He was smiling, a genuine smile, not the smug smirk he wore now. I looked younger, softer, more naive. A fleeting pang, sharp and unexpected, pierced through my resolve, a sadness for the woman I had been, for the love I thought we'd had, for the years wasted on a man who was, at his core, a selfish, hollow shell. But it was just a pang. It passed as quickly as it came, replaced by a cold, hard fury at his betrayal, at the casual cruelty with which he had tried to discard me, and beneath that fury a fierce, almost giddy satisfaction for the justice that was now less than 12 hours away. I placed the photo face down on the hall table. Some memories didn't deserve to be looked at. I slept surprisingly well, a deep, dreamless sleep. The morning of the meeting dawned clear and bright, a perfect autumn day. I stood before my bedroom mirror, not the full length one in the hallway. This was my space. I looked at my reflection. The devastated mask I had worn for months was gone. The woman looking back at me was different. Her eyes were clear, her jaw set. There were lines of strain around her eyes, yes, the price of the past few months, but there was also a strength there, a resilience I hadn't seen in a long time. Today, I wasn't playing a part. Today, I was myself, strong, determined, and ready. I chose my outfit with care, a sharply tailored charcoal gray suit, a crisp white blouse. Professional, unflappable. My makeup was understated, my hair pulled back in a sleek chignon. I looked like a woman who meant business. I picked up my briefcase. It was slim, elegant. Inside, it contained only my phone, a tube of bold red lipstick for a post victory touch up, and my car keys. Maria had everything else, all the ammunition, all the proof, all the power. A final glance in the mirror, a small, almost imperceptible nod to the woman staring back. Let's go, I whispered. The calm was still there, a steady, unwavering core. But now it was overlaid with a thrilling, electric hum of anticipation. The storm was about to break, and I was the one holding the lightning. The conference room at Owen Baker's law firm was exactly as I'd pictured: mahogany table, leather chairs, an air of expensive, self important seriousness. Darrell was already there, lounging in his chair like he owned the place, a smug grin plastered on his face. Lauren sat beside him, practically preening, her hand resting possessively on his arm. She shot me a look of pure, triumphant disdain as I walked in, Maria at my side. If cats could sneer, Lauren would have been a champion. Owen, a portly man with a booming voice and an air of perpetual, slightly condescending amusement, gestured towards the empty chairs opposite them. Nora, Maria, glad you could make it. Punctual, I see. He chuckled as if he'd made a witty remark. We sat. The tension in the room was thick enough to spread on toast. Well, Owen began, shuffling a small stack of papers. As you know, Darrell has been more than patient. He's made a very generous final offer, which I trust you've advised your client to accept, Maria. He slid the papers across the table. Darrell's final settlement. I didn't even glance at it. I looked at Maria. She gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Showtime. Before Miss Nora signs anything, Mr. Baker, Maria began, her voice calm and measured, cutting through Owen's bluster like a knife. We have a few items we'd like to present for your and Mr. Warren's consideration. Darrell snorted. More delays? What is it now, Nora? Want the good china back? Lauren giggled. Maria ignored them. From her sleek leather briefcase, she began to produce items, laying them out on the polished table with deliberate precision. First, a glossy 8x10 photo, Darrell and Lauren kissing passionately outside the five-star hotel. Then another, Lauren, beaming, sporting the new diamond engagement ring. Daryl's smile faltered slightly. Owen looked annoyed. Really, Maria? A few holiday snaps. We all know Daryl has moved on. That's why we're here. There's more than a few, Owen, Maria said smoothly. She laid out a series of bank statements, highlighted sections showing extravagant purchases, designer handbags for Lauren, five-star hotel stays, the down payment on the cherry red sports car, all from the joint account Daryl had been systematically draining. And then there are the messages, Maria continued, placing a bound document on the table, explicit messages detailing the affair retrieved from a cloud account Mr. Warren apparently forgot he shared with his wife. Daryl's face was starting to lose its smugness. He shot a nervous glance at Owen, who was frowning but still looked more irritated than concerned. They clearly thought this was just a desperate, last ditch attempt to negotiate a slightly better but still pitiful settlement. This is all very dramatic, Owen said, trying to regain control. But it doesn't change the fundamental facts. The marriage is over. Daryl is prepared to be fair. Oh, we agree the marriage is over, Maria said, her voice dropping slightly, acquiring a steely edge. And we're very interested in fairness. She paused, letting the silence stretch for a beat. Then, from her briefcase, she produced one final document. It was older, the paper slightly yellowed at the edges, but its importance radiated from it like a physical force. And then there's this formality, Mr. Warren, Maria said, her eyes locking onto Daryl's. The one you signed 15 years ago. She placed the prenuptial agreement directly in front of him. Daryl stared at it, his brow furrowed in confusion, then a flicker of dawning, horrified recognition. Lauren peered at it, her perfectly plucked eyebrows drawing together. Owen leaned forward, his jovial demeanor vanishing completely. I I don't understand, Daryl stammered, his voice suddenly hoarse. Allow me to enlighten you, Maria said. Her voice was clear, ringing with authority as she began to read. Clause 7, subsections B, infidelity. In the event that the marriage is dissolved due to proven adultery on the part of the party initiating said dissolution. She read on, her voice unwavering, detailing every consequence. The forfeiture of his claims on the primary marital home, the 70% share of all other marital assets awarded to me, the substantial claim on his future earnings for a period of 5 years as compensatory damages. The color drained from Daryl's face with every word Maria uttered. He looked like he'd been punched in the gut. Lauren's triumphant sneer had melted into a mask of slack jawed disbelief, then slowly into dawning panic. Her eyes darted from the document to Daryl, then to me, wide and horrified. Owen Baker snatched up the prenup, his hands visibly trembling as he scanned the clauses. He looked stunned, utterly blindsided. I I wasn't aware of this document's full implications, he stammered, his professional composure shattering. Daryl, you never mentioned the specifics of this. Daryl wasn't listening. He was staring at the prenup, his face a ghastly shade of pale. He reached for a pen on the table, perhaps out of reflex, but his fingers were numb. The pen slipped, clattering onto the mahogany. The sound was deafening in the sudden, suffocating silence. He was processing it. The piece of paper he'd dismissed as a mere formality, the one he'd signed with such arrogant nonchalance, had just detonated his entire future. He finally lifted his head, his eyes wild and disbelieving, finding mine. His face was a mask of fury, disbelief, and dawning terror. You! He sputtered, his voice cracking. You planned this all along. The crying, the weakness. It was all an act. I met his gaze, my own cool, level, and utterly devoid of the pity he'd so readily offered me. You made your bed, Daryl, I said, my voice quiet but carrying the weight of 15 years of quiet observation and a meticulously executed plan. Now you get to lie in it, alone, and broke. Lauren let out a small, choked sob. Not for Daryl, I noted with grim satisfaction. For her lost sports cars, her designer bags, her first class tickets to Italy, her golden ticket had just gone up in smoke. The immediate aftermath in that conference room was pure, unadulterated chaos. Daryl started yelling, a torrent of accusations and disbelief. Owen Baker, looking like he'd aged 10 years and 10 minutes, tried feebly to interject, to find some loophole, some way out of the ironclad trap my father's lawyer had set. Lauren just sat there, tears streaming down her perfectly made up face, muttering, But the wedding, the house. Maria, a bastion of calm in the storm, simply gathered her papers. Our position is clear, gentlemen. The prenup is valid and its terms are non negotiable. We expect full compliance. She stood. We'll await your formal acceptance of these terms. You have our contact information. We walked out, leaving them in the wreckage of Daryl's arrogance. The sound of his enraged shouting followed us down the hallway. I didn't look back. Daryl, predictably, tried to fight. Owen, probably under immense pressure and embarrassment, filed motions, claimed coercion, undue influence, anything he could think of. It was futile. The prenup was a fortress, just as Maria had said. Each legal challenge was swatted down, costing Daryl more money he didn't have, diminishing the already shrinking pot he was desperately trying to protect. Owen Baker's reputation took a significant hit. Word gets around in legal circles about lawyers who get so thoroughly outmaneuvered. Lauren, true to her materialistic core, didn't stick around for the financial fallout. Within weeks of the disastrous meeting, once it became clear that Daryl's promises of a lavish future were built on sand, she was gone. The cherry red sports car was repossessed. The engagement ring, I later heard through the grapevine, was discovered to be a surprisingly good cubic zirconia. Daryl, ever the cheapskate when it wasn't about his own immediate gratification, had apparently even faked that. Daryl was forced to sell his beloved golf clubs, his designer watches, anything of value to cover his mounting legal fees and the initial payments he owed me under the prenup. He moved out of the sleek bachelor pad, which the landlord was only too happy to take back given the unpaid rent, and into a tiny, depressing apartment on the outskirts of town. His family, especially Marin, were initially shocked into silence. Then came the calls. Not to Daryl, offering support, but to me. Nora, dear. Marin's voice was honey sweet, a stark contrast to her previous lectures. Perhaps we could talk. About Daryl. He's made a mistake. A terrible mistake, but he's still my son. Surely you can find it in your heart to be lenient? Marin, I replied, my voice polite but firm. Daryl made his choices. He is now living with the consequences of those choices as stipulated in a legally binding document he signed willingly. There is nothing further to discuss. I then blocked her number. True to the prenup, I got everything the house, free and clear, the lion's share of the marital assets, what was left of them after Daryl's spending spree, and the first of many substantial checks from his future earnings arrived, as per the agreement, a painful but necessary reminder for him of his folly. I sold the large family home. It held too many ghosts, too many memories of a life that was ultimately a lie. I bought a chic, modern apartment downtown, filled with light and art, a space that was entirely mine. I invested wisely, with Maria's continued astute advice, and I dusted off my old portfolio, reached out to contacts, and restarted the graphic design career I'd put on hold for 15 years. Clients came, slowly at first, then steadily. My work was good. I was good. The pain of his betrayal had been real, searing, but the meticulous planning, the quiet execution of my revenge, that brought a satisfaction so deep, so exquisite, it was almost a physical sensation. It wasn't just about the money or the assets. It was about justice. It was about karma, finally delivered with a little help from a well drafted legal document and a woman who'd had enough. There was no guilt, none, only a profound sense of closure, of empowerment. The wasted years? Yes, a twinge of bitterness for the youth and energy poured into a man who deserved none of it, but it was overshadowed by the victory, by the knowledge that I had not just survived, but triumphed. Sometimes I think about sharing my story anonymously online, perhaps on one of those forums where people recount their tales of pro revenge. Maybe it would inspire someone else, someone feeling trapped or underestimated. Tonight, I'm sitting on my new balcony, a glass of excellent wine in hand, looking out over the glittering city lights. My city, my life, free, independent, secure, built on the ashes of my ex husband's hubris. Karma, I have learned, can sometimes be a slow, meandering force, but every now and then it appreciates a well drawn map and a clear set of directions. I was more than happy to provide both. My gaze is fixed firmly on the future, a future I'm building for myself, by myself. And it looks incredibly bright. The satisfaction of a battle hard won, a quiet, steady hum beneath the surface of my new, unencumbered life. He thought he was closing a chapter. He had no idea I was writing a whole new book. And this one? This one was all mine.